All right, welcome everybody. We'll wait a couple minutes before we start. Just hang tight. All right, guys, let's start. People will be trickling in, but thanks for joining everybody. This is going to be a little chat on how to write secondaries, how to go about the whole secondaries process. I see a lot of familiar face or names, I guess, in the chat, so thank you all for joining. But some of you already know my name is Pravesh. I'm a med school coach essentially and residency coach, and been doing this for about, let's see, this is cycle number 6 now. So over 500 students helped out, IMGs, US-based med grads, get into MD programs, DO programs, first-time applicants, second-time applicants, even third-time applicants. So today is going to be focused on just secondaries. Now that we're essentially reaching that point in the cycle where secondaries are going to start flooding in, and we're going to go about how to address them, how to really even approach secondaries. So let's jump straight into it. A little bit of background about me. I was a psychobio major at UCLA, went to Loyola for medical school on a full ride in Chicago. And then that's where I started mentoring other students when I was in my later years of medical school. And then now we're on cycle number 6, and I'm a 4th-year resident at USC, 4th and final year, and then going on to fellowship in interventional neurology. So if you guys have interest in neurology or anything brain related, I'll be the guy to talk to. But either way, semi-new to Leland. This is essentially the, I guess, second cycle on Leland. And so far have found great success. I've had students accepted coast to coast and the Midwest. So pretty much a wide variety of programs ranging from top 5 to somewhere in the middle to even lower programs. So essentially anywhere and everywhere, I'm here to help. So let's jump into it. Okay, so big stuff with secondaries. And let's first get timelines sorted out. So with secondaries, let's see, we're at the end of June, June 24th today. So some of you who submitted maybe in the first, I don't know, 5 to 7 business days or might be approved by AMCAS and have gotten verified. And some of you may have already gotten 1 or 2 secondaries in, which is super, super, super early, pretty much the earliest you can get it. Others, it'll take a couple more weeks. That's totally fine. Somewhere in July, we're happy. It's still early. You're still good. Don't stress out. You're going to read a lot on Student Doctor Network and Reddit and all these forums. Don't lose yourself. Don't get too anxious about it. You're still very, very, very early. And the fact that you're here means you're on top of it. So good on you. Up until October, it's still fine. It's still very typical to get secondaries, especially even sometimes in November and December. I still have some schools will send out secondaries, but we can kind of expect them to start rolling in now if they haven't already. Then interviews can come as early as mid to end of October and go all the way up until January, sometimes even February, depending on the school. So that's kind of timeline-wise. When you guys do start getting secondaries, the goal is to submit for your high priority programs 3 days, 3 to 5 days. Like I always tell students, 72 hours should be your goal. That's why around this time is when you should start pre-writing secondaries for the schools that matter a lot to you, or that mean a lot to you. So the second they send that request in or give you that secondary invitation, then you can send it back that day. Faster the better, really. Some schools won't even start looking at your application until your secondaries are in. So some will just auto send secondaries, and won't actually sit down to review your primary application and all those other things until secondaries are submitted. So the sooner you get it, the better. What you can start doing now, if you haven't already, is start pre-writing the secondaries. And once you do about, like what we'll go over a couple of the most common questions, but you really just need a framework for each of these categories or buckets of questions we're going to talk about today. And the rest is rinse and repeat. You adjust slightly per school, but for more or less, they're kind of the same. So let's jump into the questions that we're going to discuss. So these are going to be the big question types. We're going to be discussing your diversity statement. We're going to be discussing the challenging and difficult situations and how to approach that. The why us, what you did in your gap year or several gap years, COVID issues, and anything else. Okay, let's jump into the diversity statement. So a lot of text here, just you can read this on your own time, but we're going to spend most of the time just sort of speaking here. And the goal of the diversity essay is to highlight what makes you unique. What do you bring to the table, and essentially how can you capture the interest of the reader. Now, the themes of your diversity essay and your personal statement, I get this question a lot where, hey, I discussed so much about what makes me unique in my personal statement. Can I talk about that again in the diversity essay? And that's going to be a case-by-case basis. If your theme of the personal statement is one sort of one unifying theme, I don't want you to discuss that same exact theme in the diversity essay. But if you want to pick and choose a couple stories and elaborate on them more, that's totally fine. But remember, every essay is a unique opportunity for you to discuss something different about yourself. It doesn't make sense to write the same stuff you wrote in the personal statement in the diversity essay, because why would you waste space doing that when you have other opportunity to showcase different aspects of yourself? Now, the diversity essay is, focus on things about you. If you were a scuba instructor, if you were took several years off med school and just found a bunch of odd jobs here and there, that's also super important. If you come from a minority group or socioeconomically underrepresented class, that's also worth discussing. But you don't have to. Just because you're not coming from, you're not a minority or first generation student or something like that, doesn't mean you're not diverse or don't have unique experiences that you can talk about. Sometimes it takes a little bit of brainstorming and say, hey, Pravesh, I really don't know what makes me unique or what I can talk about. Then message me. We can go through your CV and your personal statement. I can tell you, hey, as admissions committee people, we really look for these things, or we really were interested in this. But it doesn't necessarily matter what you pick, as long as you can show that you've grown and show that you've learned something along the way. Now, the general framework. So once you've sort of gotten your idea of what sort of direction you want to head in with your diversity essay, these are the questions that you need to answer. So as long as you answer these 5 things, you'll be good for your diversity essay. How did you feel during that time? How do you feel about these characteristics of yourself? How did you demonstrate these qualities through your experiences? What did you learn during this time? How did you grow from these experiences? How did you apply these things moving forward? Now let's pause here. This is a really important point because you can tell me, like all day, every day, that you love caring for underrepresented communities, or you're really interested in rural medicine or international medicine. And I can sit here and hear 20 minutes of that story, but if you didn't apply these things in your CV, or your CV does not speak to it or back it up as evidence, it's pointless. It doesn't mean anything. So one thing, you kind of have to show us evidence or proof to back up what you're saying is some of your strong diversity points. And then the bonus thing is, how can you contribute this diversity to the program? So, you have X, Y, and Z things to offer. How can you improve the program? So now we're going to pause here for a little bit and say, okay, well, how do I even figure out what I can do for a program? What does a program even have? And this is where researching programs becomes super important. And everybody, all of you, all 9,900 million people of you are going to look up the website and read through the school's website. That's a given. You have to do that. You have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and really, click on every link, go to every page, read about every article that the school has published on their website. That's a given. And the other things, what you can do to take a step forward to research programs, is more and more programs are utilizing social media. TikTok and Instagram, there's tons of day in the lives. There's tons of perspectives from admissions committee. Some admissions committee members even have their own YouTube channels. So that's super important for you to start researching. Social media is one aspect. Another aspect is going to be um, news. Google News is going to be one big thing. So what happens if you search a name of a program on just Google, it doesn't always necessarily show you local news or local events that the school was initiated or engaged with. So what happens if you click on Google News and you type in like, so-and-so School of Medicine community events, it'll show you maybe some soup kitchen had arranged an event with one of the clubs at the medical school and was published in the local neighborhood community newsletter or something along that sort. So that's your way to get insight into more of the local things that are happening in the program and with other organizations that are interacting with the medical school. So if you had experience in leading or starting a soup kitchen, and this program very much provides serve or care to the underserved, that could be something about a point that you'd want to emphasize in your diversity statement, because that program heavily emphasizes that. So you kind of have to tailor a little bit of your diversity essay to the program. And you're going to do that by figuring out what the program values. And you're going to figure that out by essentially researching them, doing a little bit more in-depth investigation. So we talked about social media, utilizing social media for the program. We talked about Google News. And the other thing about just how to Google programs is you want to type in the name of the program and then type in maybe research grants, scholarship opportunities, recent funding, or if you're interested in a certain area of research, you can type in cardiology research, psychiatry research, neurology research, and you can kind of see or get an idea of what the school is putting out there in terms of news outlets and things like that. Because at the end of the day, all this information is going to be used for you or as ammunition for you to talk about in your diversity essay, the why us, the interviews, and things like that. So you got to do a lot more than just research the website, but that's where you should start. Okay, so back to the diversity essay. So once you've gathered all that information and okay, this school very much values underserved care, for example, then we would focus our diversity essay a little bit more towards or geared more towards that area of medicine or that aspect of medicine. And then you can further speak on how you can contribute to that program. You can say, I led X, Y, and Z initiatives or organizations, or I was president of this. And these are things that are very meaningful to me, and that's what I want to contribute to your program. Okay, that's gonna be enough on the diversity essay. A lot of it's gonna be case by case basis, and you really got to figure out what you feel like are your strong suits and what do you have to offer. If you need help with that, message me. We can talk about it. Okay, now let's talk about the why us. So the why us, remember, you're interviewing medical schools as much as they're interviewing you. So they're looking at you and they're essentially asking themselves, okay, how is this person going to make our school better? How is Pravesh going to make our school better? And essentially what you have to do is kind of sell yourself a little bit and say, hey, this is what I have to offer and this is what I can provide. Now, the thing here is that you want to be able to provide information to them that is very explicit. Don't just tell me, I'm going to be great at interacting with my peers and I will lead study groups and I will do all this vague and non-specific stuff. That's great, but show us explicitly what you would want to do. I've had some students in the past form organizations or form clubs or are very much interested in things like narrative medicine or art and medicine. And then you look at the school and say, hey, you know what? This school doesn't have that interest group or have that program or that emphasis on that type of patient care. This is something I could contribute to the school. If there are specific research projects, if you're a more research heavy applicant and you see or notice someone or a certain physician or scientist at the program that is very much heavily interested in that same area of research, you can explicitly mention their name or explicitly mention research projects that you're interested in. So the more specific you are, it tells us that, okay, this person really did their research and really knows or has an idea of what they want or what they want to contribute. Now, the other thing is you can't just say, I want to do research, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. You have to show them that they align with what you've done in the past. So if you've never done any international volunteering and all of a sudden you're telling me, oh, I'm going to be the president of the international volunteer group and I'm going to lead all these initiatives, that makes zero sense. That's not genuine at all. So what you want to do is you want to show us that you're on this certain career trajectory based off the narrative or the theme of your application so far. How is this school going to help you get to that next level? So how are you going to go from, being involved in international medical groups to now leading it at your medical school and further contributing it So it's kind of like a two-way street. The school's going to benefit you, you're going to benefit the school. So that's kind of the way you should look at the why us state. And this, again, comes down to researching that school. So schools that are especially high priority for you, spend that time and take effort to figure out what that school's mission is beyond just their, we're going to create physicians that are going to be excellent leaders and educators, yada, yada, yada. But, take a moment to read through the research that they're putting out or the community events that they're engaged in, because that will tell you a lot more than a school's just generic mission statement. And that's what you're going to focus in on. That's what you're going to emphasize. Okay, excellent. That's kind of all I wanted to speak on about the why us. Let's keep it moving, and then we'll do questions and stuff at the end. Okay, now let's talk about challenging situations and difficult times. So all of us have been through challenging situations and stuff that kind of tested our resilience and determination, things like that. Now they're always going to ask, talk about a challenging time that really shaped you as a person, or that really influenced your decision to pursue medicine, or something along the sort. And I always tell students, like, when you're thinking about topics or brainstorming topics, avoid anything academic. That's not the most interesting stuff, unless like some crazy stuff happened to you and it's really out of the ordinary and very unique, and affected your academic career. Sure, we can talk about it on a case-by-case basis. But I try to stay away from that because, again, like I said before, this is an opportunity for you to discuss new and different things that I'm not already seeing in your application. And if we're very much, worried about a fail here or retake there or withdraw there, we'll ask about it during secondaries. And there's other parts of the application where you can discuss those things, but don't waste sort of that discussion on an opportunity for you to really highlight growth and long-term development. And some students will say, hey, you know what? I failed this test, but I came back great, like much stronger. I got an A. Like, that's great too. Everybody's going to say, I failed a test. I went to office hours and I studied harder and now I'm getting straight A's. So that, again, is not very unique or not very interesting to really read about. Unless, of course, there's certain case-by-case basis. So avoid those types of topics, research MCAT grades when it comes to discussing challenging and difficult situations. Now, once you have your challenging situation, or once you've brainstormed it, these are essentially the questions you need to answer. So you have the framework right here is how you manage that situation or the stress, how you resolved it, what you learned from it, how you grew. That's the most important part, is that you came out of this experience learning what about yourself or about other people. And then you get bonus points if that event or challenge occurred and then you applied those learned lessons to something else. That the next time something else happened, that you were able to use those skills and make sure that that challenge or that difficult time was avoided the second time around. And then lastly, how's this going to make you a better doctor at the end of the day? How's this going to help you excel in medical school and residency and beyond? Because believe it or not, your life is going to get a lot harder every single year. So, we have to be able to see that you're ready for it, that you can handle it. Okay, so that's going to be the discussion on challenging and difficult situations. Let's keep it moving. Okay, gap year. So now gap year, a lot of us have taken gap years, several gap years, one gap year. Some of us took masters and did public health degrees and things like that. The big thing is why? Why did you do a gap year? You can be honest and say, hey, if my grades weren't that great, I wanted to get a little bit more exposure or see if I was really ready for medical school, and see if this is something I really wanted to devote the rest of my life to. So that's one thing, why you did it. Number two, what you learned about yourself, what you learned about other people. Again, the whole point is self-reflection and growth. So if you told me you took a master's in public health, okay, why did you do that? Did you want greater insight into socioeconomic barriers to care or structural issues in medicine, or even socio-political or geopolitical things related to medicine? How's that going to help you move forward? Did you just do it because you wanted to boost your grades? That shows. So do you want to pursue a career that's engaged in community health or community advocacy? That's important. So that's part of your theme. But anyway, I digress a little bit on that. So why you did it, what you learned, how is this going to make you better as a medical student and resident and future doctor? And those are, you see the kind of theme here is that every time I discuss one of these questions, it's like, okay, what did you learn? How'd that make you better? And how's that going to make you a better doctor? So remember, keep this general framework in mind. And the more time and effort you spend in that self-reflection and growth portion of these essays, the better this will turn out. Okay, great. That's all I'm going to talk about for the gap year. And then let's move on to COVID challenges. So pretty much every one of us was affected by COVID in one way or another, some more than others. So the big thing is tell us the story, tell us what happened in COVID. Even if it's as simple as, hey, all my classes went from being in person to virtual, or I never had a graduation. Those are things still worth mentioning. Despite the setbacks, how did you overcome these things? That's kind of be the most important part. Is everybody had these challenges and everybody had these difficulties. But how did you overcome that? What did you do? Did you sort of create some organization, or did you seek help from social support groups, or what did you do during that time? And then again, same thing like always, how is this going to help you moving forward? Or what did you learn from the situation? Try to keep the challenging and difficult situations question different than the COVID challenges, because a lot of schools will ask both questions. So you kind of want to have a unique story for both. And that's kind of everything for COVID challenges. Pretty straightforward. And then lastly is going to be the anything else. So you can use this opportunity in a couple of ways. In the anything else, you can describe low MCAT scores. You can use this as a time to describe any failed classes, withdrawals. If you got a C in a class, we don't really care about that honestly too much. Some schools will ask about it during an interview, but don't waste too much time discussing it in anything else. Usually it's going to be several MCAT scores or very low MCAT scores, or D's or withdrawals or fails or things like that. And if you wanted to discuss another aspect of your application, you can do so here. This also includes any updates that you've had since you submit the primary application. You can say, hey, you know what? I kind of discussed this thing in my work and activities as a potential published manuscript, for example. And then let's say by the time you got the secondary, it was accepted. You can mention that here, or anything else new. And that's kind of it. So it's going to also be a very case-by-case basis thing and say, hey, Pravesh, is this something okay to mention, or should I just leave it out? We'll decide. And some students, I'll say, hey, leave it out. Let's discuss it during an update letter at a later time. But again, case-by-case basis, and that's when you should reach out to me to ask. And I think that's everything I had. So pretty quick, just to get you guys, the juices flowing and to sort of figure out how you should frame each of these big five questions in the secondaries. And what we can do now for the next 15 to 20 minutes is just kind of open it up to questions. So what y'all can do is either fire away in the chat or just unmute and just answer any questions you have. And then I'll take it back to this part. And then if no one has any questions, oh, here we go. Is adversity the same thing as challenge essays? Yes. So any adversities that you faced in your life will be very similar, or if not the same, as a challenging or difficult situation. Of course, Andrew, of course. How serious does the challenge or failure have to be? Very good question, Jessica. So it doesn't have to be serious at all. I've had students say their like pet goldfish died, and it was a very important event for them. It all depends on what that event meant for you and how important it was for you, not me, the reader, not anybody else. And what we care about the most is sort of how you grew from that time. What did you learn about yourself, and how did you grow? And secondly is how you applied those things moving forward. Hopefully that answers your question. Can you go back to the first diversity slide? Of course. Here we are. And then how much do schools' secondary essay prompts vary from year to year? Not very much at all, to be honest. So y'all should go on Student Doctor Network and other forums and start at least looking through some of those prompts. Because most of the time, about 80% of those questions are going to be the same. Some schools notoriously have not changed their question in over 6 or 7 cycles, or 6 or 7 years. So, yeah. Let's see. Gerda, you have asked, should we focus more on speaking directly at answering the question or more on specific stories? Um, the I guess I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding that, but it's the focus should be more so on of course you want to answer the question, but we care more about your specific story, and mostly about the growth and development during that story, the what you're showing us. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. Andrew, oh, let's see. I guess what I meant was without the stories or with. Oh, with stories. We want stories in all of these. That's the most important thing. Like a narrative for each essay, exactly. Every essay should be a narrative. Every essay should be an opportunity for you to discuss a story, because that really sets you apart from the show versus tell. Where if you show me through a story or show me your development or trajectory over X number of years through a story, that's going to be really the best way to approach this. Andrew, with that question, reach out to me privately. We can sort of discuss that a little bit more. I won't be focusing too much on specific stories right now, but thanks for understanding. Editing software such as Word, Grammarly, etc. They're all fine. You know, the one thing I will say is just avoid ChatGPT. I can pretty much pick up when a student has used ChatGPT within the first like 10 minutes, not even the first 10 seconds of reading an essay. So it has a very interesting and stereotyped way of writing about reflection and growth and development. So pretty much avoid that at all. The second slide before the why us, let's see, was that it's pretty much this one. But yeah, all great questions. Keep them coming. I can move over to another slide as well. I'll give it a couple more minutes, and if there's no other questions left, we can end a little bit early. And then you guys, I encourage you to sort of message me, and if you have specific questions about how you should approach certain parts of the secondaries and things like that, definitely ask, because there are certain things that I would recommend saving for the interview versus discussing in secondary. So it's always a case-by-case basis with each student, and that's what we'll take time to get to know each other and figure out what's going to work best for you guys. What is the most looked at prompt? Like, which one should you focus more on? The diversity statement and the why us are probably going to be the two essays that are focused on the most. Spend the most time on those two and creating a really strong story for both of those. Because many schools will really only just ask those two questions and have two 500-word prompts on the why us and the diversity statements. So yes, Greta, that is exactly right. So you should focus more on these 5 topics that I've brought up today during the PowerPoint, and for all your schools essentially, because 90% of schools will ask one of these 5 or 2 of these 5 in some way, and it'd be nice to have that framework already set to go. And then once the school sends you that secondary, you can customize it. And like I discussed about the research and things like that, you can tailor each secondary to each school. But what I will say is do not use the exact same exact same essay that you've written for multiple schools, just because you want to show them that you took the time and effort to research the program and really get to know them. Libby, for the diversity essay, the ones that ask about DEI specifically, if you have nothing about DEI related, how do you approach this? So with the diversity essay, it doesn't have to be related to DEI. It can really be anything. The whole important point is talking about how this will help you in the future at becoming a future physician and things like that. So if you're not engaged in any diversity or inclusion events, it could just be your upbringing in general, or even some people will say, my intellectual background gives me the diversity. If you studied very interesting things in undergrad or prior, or even if you had a bunch of odd jobs before medical school, those are all things that aren't necessarily in DEI, but still are unique to you and worth mentioning. Jessica, good question. Is it okay to see your interest in a school is largely due to their opportunities in a specialty you're interested in? Avoid that. Don't corner yourself into one specialty. I always tell students that you don't want to tell someone, "Hey, I'm going to go into medical school becoming a cardiologist or a neurosurgeon," and things like that. You have no idea, and you have no idea what that's like. So don't come off kind of naive and don't come off too set in stone about anything. The goal is to show them that you're flexible, that you're open, and that you're excited to explore a bunch of different things. You can briefly state that you're interested in XYZ things, but always preface that with like, "Hey, I'm ready to explore anything and everything." Let's see. Gerda, if you included a lot of diversity in the impactful experiences section, should it be something new? That also depends. That's going to be a case-by-case basis, depending on what the story is. In most situations, that's okay. And you can further elaborate in the diversity essay, but it also depends on the story. So I won't focus too much on that because it really depends on what you've written and how you've written it in the impactful experiences section. Sure thing. Yeah, with my contact info, I think Amanda had provided a link in the chat with my contact info on Fiverr, but I think, yeah, there you go. And you can message me on there and just make a free account. There's no obligation to it, and you can message me. You can message me freely. You don't have to like schedule any talk or anything or purchase a package right away. Just reach out to me. Just message me and we can chat a little bit more about what you're looking for, what your needs are, and things like that. Um, of course, my pleasure, Andrew. Please, yeah, reach out. And then, the things that you want to focus on secondaries when the time comes, if you all need interview help and any sort of advice on interviews and how to approach that, I'll have a talk on that probably next month or so. Jessica, what if a secondary question asks something unrelated to us, like about a thesis project, if we've never done a thesis? Generally, secondaries won't be that specific. They're usually general and very open to interpretation. So you generally won't be faced with a question of that nature, but that's also going to be a case-by-case basis. We'll have to go through your application and sort of see how we can make things fit. And if not, then we'll sort of kind of go from there on an individual basis. But reach out to me. If that happens, then you can feel free to message me and talk about it. Brandon, how would you go about a question that asks you why you need the MD or DO degree to help impact medicine? Well, that kind of comes about why medicine. That should have maybe been alluded to in your personal statement about medicine offers you that opportunity to sort of have direct patient care or community advocacy or leadership or science or physician scientists. These are all things that are ideas or topics that should have been introduced in the personal statement and essentially why medicine. But usually I've yet to come across a secondary that asks that, or it's been quite rare. But again, we can kind of talk about that a little bit more in detail, because that also depends on how you approach your personal statement, what you wrote about in the personal statement. Are there any topics you should avoid in a question that asks about any hesitations or reservations about joining the medical field? Yeah, some topics to avoid when discussing that, because that's a good question, Emily. So I've had a lot of students say that they're not looking forward to, or some of their hesitations are insurance companies. Um, I would avoid that entirely. Insurance companies and things like discussing, um, that's kind of probably the biggest thing. Avoid that, because that's something that is not sort of, I guess, in your control at this moment in time. What you can discuss are what are usually topics that are usually a little bit more favored amongst the admissions committees would be to discuss things like how you anticipate that things might get challenging and that burnout is a very real and very pervasive thing in medicine. And then you can kind of show that, I have some reservations in that area, that maybe my work-life balance won't be as strong as what I've been told. And then you can use that opportunity and spin it and say, hey, this is what I've done to best prepare myself, or this is what I've done to sort of best, prepare yourself for that experience in medicine, or best address those reservations in the future. But yeah, that's kind of the best way to do it, is kind of spin it, is to show that you have prepared or have some level of readiness for it. But the insurance thing is, I see that too frequently. So definitely avoid that at all costs. The school asks for non-overlapping content from primaries. Can you still write about different anecdotes from the same experiences? Yes, you can, definitely. You can, if it's the same experience, some same shadowing experience or clinical experience or volunteer experience, but you just have different stories and interactions with people, that's totally fine to discuss. As long as the stories themselves are different, the experiences as a whole can be totally the same. All right. I think maybe we'll just cut it here. And then if you all have questions, reach out to me. And then we can go into a little bit more depth and a little bit more like personal stuff with your guys' secondaries and things like that. But the biggest thing I can tell you is start working on them now, get them done within 3 to 5 days, and then, yeah, send them off. And best of luck to everybody. Reach out if you have questions, but thanks for joining.